Hi, you've reached the Talking Racewalking podcast. It's all about racewalking, of course. It's talking to racewalkers from around the world about racewalking. Join me, Noel Payne, a amateur racewalker in Canada, as I talk to elites, Olympians, record holders, masters walkers, and anybody who's out walking as fast as they can. Hi, so this is a section where I'd actually be talking to someone, a race walker. So this is where you can come in. If you know a race walker, you're a race walker, and you have an amazing story, I want to hear from you. So reach out, let's chat, let's get walking and talking. Hello, everyone. Another episode of Talking Racewalking, and I have the honor of bringing on a friend of mine this time who I've known I've known him better over the last few years as a race walker, but as a youngster, I watched our guest run in Nova Scotia at an elite level, and he was one of my heroes growing up. So I want to welcome Randy Bullerwell to the Talking Racewalking podcast. Randy, welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate this, Noel.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's good fun. We've had the opportunity to get to know each other a little bit better. So I'm going to introduce you to the guests, to the listeners. Sorry, not the guests, the listeners. So Randy is now a race walker. Randy's a masters athlete. But growing up, I knew him as one of those lean-legged, fast-running guys that I would see at the road races in Nova Scotia. I grew up rural, looked at the newspapers and tried to get out to the local races. And I looked up to those guys who came across the finish line first. There was a bunch of them back then. The names won't mean much to folks who aren't from Canada or Nova Scotia, but there was Randy, there was Smartex Tambala, Norm Tinkham, Luke McDonald. There was a whole bunch of guys, and I thought they were just gods, and Randy was one of them. So we're going to start off by giving you some background on Randy, because now, Randy, I've gone back and dug up some of your records and your times and stuff, but I'll let you kind of talk about those a bit. But tell me about how your, I guess, athletics career started, I guess, because you're a runner first and then a race walker. So how did you get into athletics and running to start with?
Yeah, a normal junior high activity. I found out quite early in grade seven that I guess these legs were made for running, and I just never looked back. I was very fortunate to have a coach there in Yarmouth, and then when he moved away, the actual teacher, the physical education teacher, was amazing. And while I was under her as getting us entered in the races and all that, my coach had moved down to Florida, Bob Wall, and he still liaisoned with me by mail, snail mail. And so it was a lot of here's your workouts for the next 2 weeks. I would report what my workouts, how they went, and then he'd send me the next 2 weeks. And it was just overlapped, and that's how we began. And it went right on into when I got to university. I continued my running. Really, that's one of the main reasons I went to Dalhousie University was to run cross country. I heard so much about the program that that's what I wanted to do. And running, obviously, at that by that stage had become part of my life, especially early in the mornings.
Now, I love it. I think we have a common connection there in terms of both of us are kind of rural boys from Nova Scotia, probably if you were like me, it was like the only runner in the community, like the oddball guy out running in the middle of nowhere. And same thing, we both went to Dow. I just had less talent than you did, but yeah, same thing, very common experiences. I kind of know where you're coming from. So, and for those folks who don't know Randy, very fast. What's your 5K and 10K personal best, Randy? Just to give people an idea of how fast a runner you were.
my 5K was 14:24. My 10K was 29:39.
Yeah, that'll make most people's jaw drop. I would think. It's faster than
You're
I
too
am,
kind.
right?
You're too
Well,
kind.
it's like I think runners are very modest as well because I think they always know there's always somebody slower, but there's always somebody faster.
Yes.
But those are impressive times, and I know you still have a few records from Nova Scotia as well. I couldn't find the all-time records, but I know you've got a few of those still, and you actually now have a good chunk of Masters records. So you have ones from back in the 90s when you were still hammering away at running in your 40s. You've got a 1500-meter record of 4:03 in the 40 age group, a 5,000 of 15:41. And
Yeah.
thanks to race walking, you now have three outdoor race walking records to add to that. So that's impressive as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, race walking to me, it was something no, I always wanted to do. Um, Back in 84, I always wanted to go to my dream was to go to the Olympic trials. Now
Hmm.
I know there were many people better than me, um, but you never know when you get into the trials what could happen. But 6 months before the trials, came down with a really bad injury. So that dream was gone in a hurry, just like that.
Yeah.
So I ended up jogging after about a year and trying to get back into some shape. And I saw race walking at it was in Vancouver, Swangard Stadium, I believe. That's the name.
Yeah.
And so I figured out I'm going to try this one day. And I tried it. It was hard as can be, but I knew one day I will get back to race walking when I feel that I've had enough with the running and but I want to stay in physical shape. So I knew I planted the seed back in probably about 85 and now it's coming to fruition.
That is very funny. I had a similar story of race walking down a hotel hallway when I was probably 16 or 17, and I had a knack for it better than all the other foolish kids that we were all just fooling around, but I seemed to have a knack for it. And I think I was injured in my early 20s running with a group in Nova Scotia, and I had found a book on race walking, and I think I timed myself for a 5K around the track, doing, whatever version of race walking I could manage at the time. So
Right.
yeah, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny how I think some of us stumbled across it, but never really took it up until a little bit later. So it's quite interesting.
Yeah,
So
my first time I did it, no, I got right onto the track and I did a 1500 and I did it in 11 minutes. I didn't know to me that seemed hard as could be, but really the time wise when you compare it because you're a runner, you're comparing these things and I really didn't know how good it was or not. But same with my technique. I had no clue if I was doing it right or not.
exactly, and it's funny when the first time you do it, how it is. Yeah, I think I had played around with it when I was in my 20s, and then I did this of a I talked to Evan Dunphy, Canadian Olympian, for those who don't know who I can't imagine you not, but anyways, Evan was a really cool guy to talk to, and I remember when he going doing a kilometer as fast as I could. Yeah, and your eyeballs are bulging out, and
Yeah.
it's amazing how hard it is to walk fast. Beyond that point of, there's the casual walking quickly, but as soon as you go beyond that, it gets extremely tough.
Yeah.
So what was
Well,
the what was
if
the what was
if you're
the what was the event, Randy, where you decided that you were going to give race walking like a real try? When did that happen?
during COVID, that was my project. I decided I was going to lose a lot of weight. I had puffy cheeks and quite a belly. And I said, this is so unusual for me. My hiking, I do a lot of photography and I do a lot of hiking in the dawn light with my headlamp, but it wasn't enough to burn the calories. and I knew I wanted to do something. I started going out walking every morning. Like here, it's an unusually right now this year, it's an unusually humid island. It isn't normally humid here. So I would go out because I was embarrassed about doing it. I would go out, this is about April 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, and I would go out in the dark. And I'd start just going race walking. But I went on YouTube, which is when I very first found out about there are videos out there that you can learn. Carmen was the big one, the first one for me,
Yeah, Carmen
to get
Jakinski.
all
Yeah,
the drills,
yeah.
and so I did nothing but drills for a while, on the side streets, and then there's a place called Linear Trail Park here, and all you have to do for traffic is get through the roundabouts, two roundabouts, but otherwise you can just go on these lit up linear trails, and it's amazing. It's an out and back, but it's amazing. So I just went to it. I looked. Jefferson Perez was my idol. It still is. I can't believe how he could do what he did, and you know what? It's 3 years later, and you told me that some people can learn it in 6 months, some people a couple of years. Well, no, I'm going into my soon to be my fourth year. I'm not getting this technique yet, but I'm not giving up.
I don't think you're alone. I think now looking back on sort of what I had said it to, I think there's the basic technique that I think people pick up either quickly or not so much. But I think, I mean, both of us can probably agree. Once you've got the basics, there's still a whole bunch you can work on and tweak and smooth out. So yeah, I think I saw you pick up the
Yeah.
basics quite quickly. But yeah, there's after that, there's still a whole bunch to do, depending on how fast you want to race walk. So yeah, no, I feel your not pain, but I completely understand because I'm always trying to work on things as well. So very much so.
Yeah. Well,
So
sorry, go
no, go
ahead.
ahead, please, please.
After the national championships this August, I realized I'd gone basically 3 years and of training, and possibly some of it against my coach's wishes. I really didn't take much time off in between. I still would race walk. I still thought that, if I go slow, and for me, going at 640 per kilometer was slow. But after 3.5 years, no, it took its toll on me, both mentally and a little bit physically, and I just needed time off.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly getting back into it, but I'm using kind of a runner's mentality, and I'm doing long, slow distance, the LSD for those people who know it as that, and I'm really building my strength and my base right now.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I think in certain ways, probably our common link in terms of Coach Stafford in Toronto there, I think probably sees us as very similar individuals in terms of we're both fairly intense, I think. And
Yeah,
yeah, and I think both of us enjoy the training, but it's also the mental we struggle with because I think we tend to push ourselves and then find out that we need a break here and there. It's so I really feel like sometimes I have a connection with you, Randy. I watch you train and I'm kind of like, wow, that's me too.
yeah.
So, but yeah, so with all this race walking, how have you felt as a runner going to a race walk? Or do you find it's very similar in terms of what you get from it? Does it feel like a completely different sport? What's your experience of race walking? Going from a runner. I know you took some time basically off of really competitive running, but what does it feel like as a race walker? Is it
You know, yeah,
no, go ahead. Sorry.
that's a great question. Go ahead.
I was going to say, so what's your take on race walking?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And for me, I really like the idea of getting in the flow, getting into the mindset of once you get out, you're just into a rhythm, a routine, and feeling comfortable and going, and kind of just getting that euphoria, that feeling of you can't stop me now. And but you have to, pamper yourself as well and really know when to cut back, when to hold back. Today I did a 14-kilometer race walk, and it was a little slower, but I was able to control myself and do it comfortably. And I started feeling like an athlete. Today, I really felt like an athlete, just like when I race walk. I was about to say run. When I race walked the national 5K in the end of August, I really that at that point I felt like I was in a race, definitely, and I felt like an athlete, and I felt like the runner who got up onto the starting line. The adrenaline was going. I was feeling fairly confident. Feeling confident. I was feeling good about my abilities. A lot of the running mentality hit me that time and today, and it's surfacing a lot more in my training as I'm being more smart with it.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I kind of can connect with that as well. Um, and I think we both did a lot of running. So race walking too was something I think I might have been looking for as well. I've done so much running. Race walking was a new welcome challenge.
Yes.
Mm. Exactly. So what are your goals now? I mean, I know for those that don't know, I think both of us you know, struggle to balance out our passions. We both do many things. I write, I race walk, got a busy family, and I know you have your photography. If anybody hasn't doesn't know Randy Bullerwell, you Google him. He does a lot of race walking, but he's an amazing photographer as well. So I know you have other passions, and you try and balance those things out. Um, but I know at one point you weren't sure whether you really wanted to, you know, be competitive race walker, but I know you're looking at that again. What are your race walking goals? And I don't mean that necessarily just by, are you going to this competition or going after a record, that type of thing. But what are your race walking goals in the future?
Yeah, I am looking forward to longer term. No, I am looking forward to race walking becoming a regular part of my health, caring for myself routine. And I do want to compete. That will never go away. And I want to my goal this year is to get back to the basics, be really smart, and do more of what worked for me in the past. And Coach Stafford is very good at listening to me and my needs, and he can modify things really well to suit my my personality. Um, he knows me really well, and I'm not sure how he does this because we're many miles away. I'm in Nova Scotia, he's in Toronto. Everything is done online. I send videos once in a while. He helps me out tremendously with that. I want to continue that. With race walking, I want to meet more individuals. I want to continue to be inspired by individuals. And I do want to go to the nationals next year. That's my short-term goal. And I do want to continue the race walk quicker. You had a guest, Bill Cox,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah,
believe.
exactly. Yeah, the last episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he talked about being able to, when you hit the next age group, you're the youngest fella.
Yep.
And that really resonated with me. So I can't wait. I feel like a kid when I'm doing this. I feel like I'm back in my spikes, to be honest with you, and I'm on the track. I love track work, but I really enjoy the roads more, if
Yep.
that can be. Yeah.
Yeah, I also can relate to that. I think at one point I was talking to a friend of mine who used to race against it. it's that feeling. It's like that. I can still remember the smell of the first pair of track spikes I got. I can still picture them. I can still smell that sort of plasticky smell. I can still feel the new spikes that I screwed into them. Like it's the smell, but that feeling that it kind of the newness, the excitement. Um,
Yeah.
I really like that. No, I think it's really fun watching you discover this sport. We kind of hit it at the same time. Um, and I love seeing you take it on as something competitive as well, but something that, that healthy, active lifestyle as well. And I think that's the other side of race walking. There's the competitive side. I mean, because race walking really is walking as quickly as you can. But I
Yes.
think for many folks, perhaps who don't have the level of talent or time or desire to necessarily compete, it can still be a really good cardio workout for them where if they're not able to run, you can sort of push yourself, get that heart rate up. And I think especially amongst the masters crowd, which seems to be a big component of who race walkers are in Canada, US. I think that's a great thing. So
Yeah, you talk about races. Being in Nova Scotia, being retired and trying to get to other races, it's all about affordability.
yeah,
That's difficult for me. So so really the past few years, my first race was I stayed with you and we went to
yep.
Blainville, and that was my very first race ever. I was so worried I was going to get disqualified because of technique. I had no clue how it works. I still don't quite understand it, but I'm getting there. And so that was my very first race. And then since then, I had the Toronto 10K, and then I had the Nationals in Langley, BC, the 1500 and the 5000. Those are the only races that I have done. And so I'm just hoping there's some activity going on with Philip Vesti in Nova Scotia now. He's a former Olympian in the UK, race walker, and he's now coaching and trying to get some races going on in Nova Scotia. So
Yeah,
that will be interesting.
I think that's a great opportunity. I remember talking to him and telling him how I grew up and how the Run Nova Scotia and the Athletics Nova Scotia community is a really great sort of tight-knit community down there, and that it would be a great place to, to introduce them to race walking. And yeah, no, and anybody look up Philip Vesti. He's amazing. He's got some clinics. I think he was doing them out of one of the industrial parks, I think, meeting up and doing some clinics, and if not
Yes.
elsewhere as well. So
And
yeah,
in Truro, yeah.
yeah, exactly. We should connect with them and maybe do a demo race at one of the track meets or something one time to let people see what it's all about. Like,
Yeah, no, I just talked to him a couple days ago and he mentioned the fact that since he did his race walking clinics in Truro, the clubs there have wholeheartedly jumped on the bandwagon to try and get things going. And they're looking at having a couple track meets on this next summer, the 2024 track season, get a couple race walk events on it. Now, officials being able to judge the event is probably won't happen. But at the same time, at least you're right. People are out there, they're exhibiting what race walking is all about. And I'd love to be a part of that as well.
yeah, that would be great. I think I think that's where it starts. You let people see it. You let people try it, and it kind of grows from there. So I think that would be very neat. Yeah, we'll have to reach out to Philip Vesti, and I also want to give a shout out to your coach, who we keep mentioning, at Stafford Whalen with the Ontario Racewalkers, based out of Toronto. An amazing
Yeah.
guy who has a passion for the sport. Him and his wife, Lily, who is also a race walker. They both help out with the club there, but they're officials, they're judges. They help out with track meets across the province. An amazing couple who really, really drive the sport. especially sort of in Ontario. Yeah, big shout out to them. If anybody's interested in race walking who's in Ontario, they're one of the people to reach out to. Great resource and great people. So
No, yeah, no, on that note, it's amazing because you always wonder how can I thank him and her, so, Stafford and Lily, because they do so much for so many people. And I don't know, I've come a long way both physically and mentally. And he's really been patient with me. He's helping me put things into proper perspective. And yet he continues to raise the bar a little bit each time. And I don't know how he does that. And I admire him wholeheartedly. I just wish I was there in Toronto. But that's not the way it is right now.
yeah, I have the same problem, and yeah, I'm a complete pain in the ass for Stafford just because I'm sort of so far away, and I struggle mentally and physically the last little while. So yeah, I've got to touch base with him again as well, and try and get on board. And a coach, I think, is always good to have. I think it's hard when you've been training on your own for a long time, but that coach is able to provide that sort of overview to be able to look at the big picture when you can't. And I think Stafford does a
Yes,
good job of that.
he certainly does. And I have to tell you, I took a minute and 19 seconds at the National Track Championships. I took a minute and 19 seconds off my personal best for 5K. And he said to me, your goal is 30-30. And I'm like, holy, where's this coming from? But he was always consistent with that. He was always consistent with that. And the workouts were showing that I could
You can do it.
possibly do that. It just came down to me believing.
Yeah.
And when I did 30-22, he came running over. I got more joy out of him than actually, well, besides questioning the time, I got more joy and satisfaction out of watching him. It made it worthwhile for me.
No, yeah, I love seeing the passion he has for it. I've introduced people to him, and he's just willing to help and really grow the sport. And it's pretty amazing to watch. Randy, I want to cap off our chat here. I wish we could probably chat on forever, but I want to finish off our podcast chat here with a couple questions. And one of them being, what would you advise what's your one key piece of advice you give someone who's looking to start race walking? What would you tell them from your
Oh,
experience?
good question, because I wanted to jump right into it.
Me
But
too.
I wish I could pronounce her last name, but I'm not sure. Carmen?
Carmen Jakinski. Yes, if anybody doesn't know, it's Carmen Jakinski. And if you can't remember that, go Google Reshod. Carmen is a
Oh,
coach, a
Coach
race
Carmen.
walker. Yep, Carmen. And she makes race walking shoes called Reshod race walking shoes. But go ahead, Randy. Sorry.
She was the one that really got me into how do I start this whole process. And I didn't go out, I just did the drills. I just went in and did my drills first consistently, probably 5 times a week. And they would last me about, I don't know, 40 minutes.
Wow.
But I religiously did those for 3.5, 4 months. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to go out and go onto the roads. But of course, I wanted to go at night because I was still feeling very embarrassed
Yep.
with the whole idea of the wiggle wiggle. But I got out there. So I would really strongly recommend people trying to get the drills and the technique down before they get into any longer kinds of warm-ups and workouts. Yes, you have to do some workouts, but I actually jogged a little bit from my warm-ups, sorry, before I did the drills. I did a little jogging and walking, normal walking before I did my drills and stretching. So that's probably the one thing that I would recommend.
No, I think that's great advice. And for anybody who's tuned in or checking out this podcast on YouTube, I've tried to put together some playlists of race walking videos. In those, you'll find videos that Carmen has done. So she has lots of resources. One of the things she does have is a lot of great videos on YouTube. You'll find some in the Talking Race Walking playlists where she does, stretching, strengthening, drills for race walking. So a lot of great resources there. So I echo
Yes.
what Randy says. And the last question to cap things off, Randy, who would you be interested in hearing from on a Talking Race Walking podcast? Who, whether it's a coach, a fellow athlete, an elite race walker, who would you find interesting to hear from?
Wow. You know what? You had Bosworth on there, but
I did.
I would love to hear the philosophies of some Australian race walkers. I had Declan, you had on
Yep,
there,
Declan's been on.
and
Yep,
I was, pardon me?
I did. Yeah, Declan was a great chat.
Yeah, and I love the philosophy of the school system and how they get involved, and I would love to learn more about those kinds of things. But even when you talk about Europeans, they're so much further ahead in masses, not in necessarily the best in the world, but in getting more people out at younger ages to do this. I would love to hear more about that as well.
Yeah, no, as well. I agree. Whether it's the Spanish walkers or even you look at India, the number of race walkers
Yes,
is just
yes,
crazy. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
That's a great idea. I will definitely try and do that. Thank you again for the chat, Randy. It's been really fun connecting. It's been an honor having you on the podcast, and I look forward to seeing your race walking in 2024.
No, it's been my pleasure. I appreciate it so much.
All right, take care and walk happy.
Yes, you as well.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Talking Race Walking. We've got our first sponsor on board, so thank you to Reshod Walking Shoes for sponsoring this episode and continuing episodes of Talking Race Walking. Reshod Walking Shoes are designed to keep you moving. Find them at reshod.com. Racewalk shoes designed by Carmen Jakinski from the United States, a race walker and racewalk coach.